everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and just kick it off because I was going to do a quick intro. Today we have the honor to have Tom Dykes presenting on our Dome9 product line. Tom has come to Checkpoint. Well, he's actually been in Checkpoint for about 5 or so years. He's our cloud security specialist. He's been in the marketplace for a few decades, we'll say. I don't want to date him too much, although he probably gave it away saying that he had children at Mississippi State. But Tom is a cybersecurity expert, I would say. He's been in this field a long time. He's held a few jobs within Checkpoint, but currently is the cloud security specialist for the southern part of the US. And he's going to be talking about Dome9 today. So we're going to go through Dome9. We're going to go through a little bit of the product set. At the end, we'll talk about some good action items and some pricing and competition stuff. And then with that, I'm going to kick it over to Tom Dykes, and the floor is yours, Tom.
Hey, thanks. Hey, good morning, y'all. This speaking to you from just south of Fort Worth, Texas. It's always interesting to know where people are these days, since we have such a tough time getting together face to face. And you can't see my face at the moment, but yeah, I got a few decades in the business, and to call me a specialist or an expert, I always kind of giggle when I hear that, because I feel like I'm just barely hanging on sometimes to keeping up with the technology. But I like new stuff. I like hearing about, one of my biggest joys in the working world is, helping people solve problems, but also just learning about new technology. And cloud is cool new stuff. So learn along with me about this stuff. I am going to share my screen and show you a few PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure exactly how this panelist and audience thing works, but hopefully I can hear you, or someone will let me know if you have questions. So
I think Trisha is going to run the Q&A in chat, but I'll be here too, Tom.
Yeah, so
I can see the screen. So
yeah, so absolutely. Interrupt me if at any point there's a question that I can answer. We've got plenty of time here, so let's do this. This is kind of what I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk a little bit about strategy and capabilities to secure today's cloud. Cloud's a moving target, and it's pretty different than traditional IT. Just heard a statistic yesterday that cloud spending has surpassed traditional IT spending. I forget what the source was and exactly how that's measured, but it's an interesting yardstick that we're actually seeing companies spend more money in cloud infrastructure than in traditional IT infrastructure. It really is a massive migration to cloud, and COVID and keeping us at home has only increased that. So there's some interesting things about that environment that we'll take a look at. And I will tell you a little bit about Checkpoint's approach to cloud native security and how that fits into our Infinity architecture. And then let's talk about how to make money off this stuff. Let's talk about the pricing, the competition, how to identify an opportunity, and what typical sales process looks like. So the changes in the market, data centers and apps are now everywhere. We used to have traditional data centers. Things were kind of centrally managed. Things were a little bit monolithic, and most of the apps were on premises. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Where we're going to in the cloud is we've got this idea of hybrid and public models, where there's the infrastructure is for rent. You're paying someone else to run your data center for you and do all those menial tasks that can now be extremely automated and can go super hyperscale in the public cloud. Remote offices are connecting directly to the cloud instead of going through a data center. So that poses some security challenges where we used to be able to establish a secure perimeter and force traffic through gateways in order to enforce security. It's not so easy to do that. And and the cloud is not just infrastructure that you rent from someone else. They're actually changing the architecture of things. Containers, serverless, microservices. There's some opportunity to completely re-architect applications to work in the cloud in a completely new and different way, and do some super cool things. There's more and more SaaS applications where more and more of kind of higher in the value stack as far as what you can get from a public cloud provider. It's not just, computing and storage. You can get all kinds of things already wrapped up, ready to made, and ready to do your work for you without having to, customizing it less and less. And the great thing about this from the customer's point of view is they can really speed things up. This idea of agile methodology and DevOps has really sped up the way customers can deploy things and can be more agile about the way they move and change thanks to the cloud. But this stuff takes place really, really fast, and you've got keeping up with that from a security point of view can be pretty challenging. So we've kind of broken this down into 4 steps in the way that that we're approaching security for the cloud. Step 1 is network security and threat prevention. The word network is really key there. If you look at Checkpoint's legacy, the company's about 27 years old now. We started out in network security. Our founder literally holds the patent for the stateful inspection firewall. So firewalls have been the mainstay of our business for many, many years. It's actually only a small part of our business, even though it's a big part of our reputation. But network security is still important in the cloud. It's still important to establish a perimeter and to do microsegmentation. It's not nearly enough because we're moving towards zero trust architectures and not relying simply on that secure perimeter for security. So the next step in that is security posture management. And what I mean by that is the ability to evaluate your security, compare it to what it ought to be, and kind of do compliance testing. Is your security posture management where you think it should be? And the reason that's important is because in the public cloud, it's infrastructure as code. You need to have X-ray goggles to be able to look into that infrastructure and see what you've got, what assets you have, how those assets are connected together, how data flows through those things, and who's accessing what and what its exposure level is. You need special tools to be able to do that. And then the next step is, since there are microservices and a bunch of other new things that are available in the cloud that were never available in the traditional IT infrastructure, applications are changing. They're being re-architected to take advantage of those services. So your application security needs to be able to move and flex and take advantage of those things as well. And then ultimately, you need cloud intelligence and threat hunting. You need to understand exactly what the background is of the malicious things that might be coming after you, how to identify those things extremely proactively, and to go looking for them, not just wait for those things to occur, but to proactively go looking for threats to stop them. So I'm going to use those 4 steps. Actually, I'll add a 5th, because I'll take that application security and kind of divide it into 2. And we'll talk about how to do those things and how to do them at the speed of DevOps. And kind of the thing you got to be wary of here is disparate solutions and piecemeal things that you put together are going to be very tough on you in a cloud world, because being able to do security at scale, being able to do multi-level security across different cloud environments, especially if your customer is multi-cloud, if they're using, for instance, AWS and Azure, you need, being able to, use the tools in just AWS and just Azure doesn't give you a complete view. You need tools that span those environments. You need to be able to do those things very fast, because the way these cloud applications can change and move with the new microservices that are available, your security needs to be able to change and move that way as well. And it needs to be everywhere. You need a consistent security approach across those cloud environments, whether you're hybrid or public or some combination of different cloud providers. So in short, security needs to be automated and it needs to be everywhere. So I'll tell you a little bit about Checkpoint's approach to this, our cloud native security platform. We've mentioned Dome9. That term is we use it a lot within Checkpoint because we made this incredible acquisition 2 years ago, a little company called Dome9, and it is very transformational in the way that we approach cloud security, but it's only one small component of it. So let me tell you about the entire cloud native security platform. We kind of start out with those core services that are provided by the public cloud. You know, compute, database, all the micro and nano services, and all of those public cloud providers also provide basic security stuff. They all provide some sort of a firewall. They usually provide some compliance tools. A couple of them provide their own SIM, and they've got some security management tools. Good basic stuff, maybe adequate if you're not re-architecting our applications, maybe adequate if you're not multi-cloud, maybe adequate if things are just not too challenging. What Checkpoint is providing, because what I've just described is never the case. Things are always challenging. You're frequently, most customers are going to be looking at multi-cloud because they don't want to be locked into just one provider. So what Checkpoint is adding is intelligent threat prevention across all those environments, higher fidelity security context, basically a much richer way of stopping threats, and greater automation. Automation into the CI/CD, that's the continuous integration, continuous development pipeline, and lots and lots of automation to make this stuff work across all those cloud environments, and to make it work easy because this stuff is going to scale up fast, it's going to move fast and change fast. So automation is really key. So the elements that we're going to put in place there, we're going to start out with that private and public cloud network security. That's sort of step one from the previous slide. And then step two, the cloud security posture management. So again, these are the modules that are part of Checkpoint's cloud native security. The next one, this is kind of where I mentioned I was going to split the application security into two different pieces. So this first is workload protection for containers and serverless. Containers and serverless are kind of one of the first steps in re-architecting applications, going from just compute and storage to kind of a completely different way of building applications. And then web app and API protections. Most of the applications are going to be running through a web browser. So web apps and the APIs that are used for web apps and a different way of securing those things is super important here. There are web application firewalls out there that are very specialized tools to do that, but they're built on rule sets, and it takes a lot to maintain those rule sets. Most people who use web application firewalls, they find them a little overwhelming. There's a lot of staff required to maintain those rule sets, and a great deal of automation is needed in that area, and that's one of the things that we provide. And then again, that fifth step, the cloud intelligence and threat hunting, the ability to look at malicious threats and go after that stuff proactively to provide even better prevention rather than just waiting for something to happen. So I'm going to focus in on this cloud security posture management. That is the basic building block that we got with our acquisition of Dome9 2 years ago, and it sort of transformed the way that we do cloud security and has enabled, like everything else in that circle. We had the private and public cloud network security from our legacy products, from the firewall application the firewall technology that we already had. That was a pretty simple thing to import into the cloud, but we needed some additional tools, and we just, again, the acquisition of Dome9 was that brought incredible technology in-house for Checkpoint for transforming the way we do cloud security.
So Tom, I have a quick question or thought. In terms of what Checkpoint does on top of the cloud platforms have their own security, especially AWS and Azure. So with that being said, is it fair to say that the Checkpoint cloud security is more like a security wrap around the data on those platforms? So it's enhancing that security for those platforms?
Absolutely. Yep. It's in many cases, we either complement the existing security tools and and provide, like you say, a wrapper, and oftentimes we replace some of those security tools with something that is better, a bit more sophisticated, the richer, higher fidelity security context, and particularly tools that can be used across multiple platforms to give you a consistent view of security across multiple providers, so that you're not locked into just one provider.
Great. So that means if they already have an AWS or Azure and like, oh yeah, we have security tools, you'll be set. In reality, they're going to need a lot more security tools than just on the base model, and that's where we come in.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Microsoft in particular is they're a very partner-friendly company, and their chairman has actually said on a number of occasions, yeah, we provide good basic security tools, but we rely on our partner community to provide the much more sophisticated security tools. I think they feel like they have a responsibility to provide all those basic tools, and AWS is a little less partner-friendly. They will tell you that, oh no, this is everything that you need right here in AWS. Well, they'll also tell you that AWS is the only cloud provider that you'll ever need, and that's just not the case. And so you need to be able to be flexible. Your customer is going to need to be flexible to take advantage of more than one cloud provider, and to have more sophisticated security than just what the cloud provider themselves can provide. So let me talk about this in terms of kind of a cloud journey. Again, kind of the same thing that I showed earlier is going around the circle. Let's talk about that as a cloud journey. And this is kind of we'll start with the foundational protections that most customers will need if they move into the cloud. Is they'll begin with that cloud network threat prevention. Basically, building a perimeter, doing microsegmentation, the same kind of things that you would do in a traditional network security setting. You'll also need to do that in the cloud. So the same software and the same functionality that we provide in a traditional security gateway or firewall or next generation firewall, we can also load that on a virtual machine in the cloud. And then the next step is that cloud security posture management, to be able to see everything that you've got in the cloud. One of the things you can do is you can sort of check yourself. You can sort of check yourself for the perimeter that you've established. Is your perimeter truly secure, or are there assets that are not where you think they are? That's not always an easy thing to see within the cloud. Gartner, we rely on Gartner, and they bring us some interesting insights. One of the things that they've said is that more than 95% of the cloud security breaches are probably going to be the customer's fault due to just misconfiguration. That's what the cloud security posture management tools are there to help the customer not have those misconfigurations, to give them the visibility into their assets, how they're interconnected, how data flows through them, who's accessing those things, and what their exposure level is. Again, it's the X-ray goggles to look into that cloud infrastructure and see what they've got. So then the next couple of steps there, the cloud application security and the cloud workload protection. Customers are going to need those tools if they're re-architecting applications. And then the more advanced tools, still very important, but the greater bang for the buck is going to be on the left-hand side of this picture. Still very important, but more specialized tools on the right-hand side of the picture, getting into the cloud intelligence and threat hunting. So again, one of the foundational elements here, the cloud network security, very much like a traditional firewall or next generation firewall. It's just something that you load on a virtual machine or a scalable set of virtual machines. Amazon calls this an EC2 or an elastic computing instance. Azure and Google Cloud call it a virtual machine, but they also make available scalable sets of those computing things so that they can scale up and down with workload. So that's one of the things that that's available with the cloud network threat prevention. And then also, and that's sort of the the traditional gazintas and gazoutas around the perimeter of the network. That's the north-south protection. East-west protection is protection within the cloud for connections between applications, between computing instances, between batches of storage that that you maybe didn't intend to be there. There can be east-west leakage if you don't establish really good security. So you need east-west protection to make sure that things are not talking to each other that shouldn't be. It's a little different type of security that's required inside the cloud, and that's what we call the east-west security. The nice thing about this is it's unified management. The same management that, if it's an existing Checkpoint customer or someone who has on-premise requirements and cloud security requirements, we can unify the management between those two things. Again, another great Gartner quote out there. They once called Checkpoint's security management the gold standard in security management. Our management is really elegant, and we extend that management into the cloud for the cloud network security. And then there's a lot of automation built into this, a tremendous amount of automation tools for auto provisioning and auto scaling. One of the beautiful things about cloud computing is it's very elastic. You only pay for what you need, only pay for what you use. So your security needs to be elastic as well. So we've got auto provisioning and auto scaling tools to work with those elastic elements of the cloud. So the second step in that cloud journey, the cloud security posture management. So I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit. The visibility, the ability to actually see what you've got in the cloud, to be able to tell exactly what your storage elements, your computing elements, all your other nano services, what those things do, how they're interconnected, how data flows through those things. You need tools to be able to see that. It's not always clear. Again, the possibility of just misconfiguring something and leaving something exposed. You need automated tools to take a look at that stuff and to give you good visibility into it. And I mean literally visibility of just showing how everything looks in some sort of a graphic viewpoint, and then to be able to run rule sets against that. Let's make sure that your customer may be trying to make sure that everything about their security complies with NIST or CIS frameworks. So you can run compliance rule sets against what you have to make sure that you're adhering to those frameworks. It can give you an exception report and show you where you're or not and suggest how to remediate that. Or there are some automation that can auto remediate that stuff for you. So there's compliance tools, and then the ability to write your own compliance rules. The compliance tools out of the box are, they'll kind of fall into three categories. There are security frameworks like CIS and NIST, and we actually have high trust that'll be available before the end of the year. And then regulatory compliance rule sets to make sure that you're compliant with things like PCI, HIPAA in the healthcare world, GDPR for anybody who deals with any kind of customer data. There are compliance rule sets for those regulatory things. And then there are compliance rule sets for just best practices for the way you would set up an AWS cloud network, the way you would set up Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform. And then you can combine those rule sets and customize those into your own. And there's a very simple scripting language for writing your own rules if you have unique compliance requirements. But again, a lot of automated compliance and best practice tools to make sure that you have that X-ray vision into the cloud, and that what that you understand exactly what you have and what its exposure level is, to avoid those easy misconfigurations that can cause security problems. So I'm not going to go into the, just in the interest of time, I'm not going to delve into the application security and the cloud intelligence and threat hunting. Those kind of big topics unto themselves. But what I would like to jump into here is just talk a little bit about a consolidated security architecture and how cloud security fits into that, and why it's important to have that consistent security across the entire IT infrastructure. We have our consolidated security architecture is called Checkpoint Infinity, and the idea is you have globally shared threat intelligence, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that, and a single security management and a unified policy across all of these different, call them attack surfaces, environments, whatever, whether it's endpoint, mobile, cloud, data center, offices, data centers, and IoT devices and industrial control systems and that sort of thing. Let me kind of start out with just a completely clean sheet of paper to explain what I mean by the Checkpoint Infinity architecture and what is meant by shared threat intelligence and common management. The shared threat intelligence, we call ours Threat Cloud. It's basically our database of everything that we know about malware, about viruses, about malicious actors, and even to the point of something that we call malware DNA, as we've been able to identify through artificial intelligence and a lot of research and experience, kind of families of malware and how to more quickly identify those things, basically through what we call it malware DNA. It's kind of, hackers tend to follow patterns. They tend to try the same things, maybe with a little different twist here and there. But a lot of the stuff that we have in this shared threat intelligence, comes from that sort of knowledge and that experience that we've had with catching this stuff. And we can share that threat intelligence in a couple of different ways. We can share it among customers. All of this data is, it's macro level data. It's not, stuff that could identify any individual customer. But if we discover a new vulnerability with one customer, we're able to create a signature for that and push that out to every other customer. It's like, all of those firewalls and devices in the field that run Checkpoint software, they're like millions of sensors out there where we pick up new information that we can feed into Threat Cloud. So we can share it among customers. We can also share it across attack surfaces. If somebody tries something on a laptop, that a mobile device might also be vulnerable to the same thing. So we can share it across attack surfaces. And that's pretty powerful to be able to. That's one of the reasons you would want a complete architecture rather than just point solutions to protect just endpoints, just mobile devices, or just cloud services. It's important to be able to share that threat intelligence across all those environments. And then consolidated security management, so that you don't have to have a swivel chair to manage each one of those environments. You don't have to have one management system for your endpoint, one for your mobile, one for your cloud, one for your traditional data centers. You want consolidated security management so that you can have unified security policy across all those environments, so that you don't have lots of disparate systems to manage. So this is Checkpoint's traditional business, again, is the network-specific threat prevention. I mentioned earlier that our founder actually holds the patent on the stateful inspection firewall, and that content inspection is the foundation of a lot of things that we do to do network-specific threat prevention. We bundle up a set of packages, a set of protections. We call them the next generation threat protection and next generation threat extraction, NGTP and NGTX. It's just a collection of threat prevention technologies that we bundle together when we do the software for next gen firewalls. The full stack is called Sandblast Network, and Sandblast is it's a play on sandboxing, which the very highest level protection. That's built on top of that content inspection. And then we have similar endpoint-specific threat prevention for laptops and servers. We've got mobile-specific threat prevention, again, layered on top of content inspection. But without the cloud and IoT environments, that's basically in the infinity architecture right there. We protect mobile, we protect endpoint, we protect network with shared threat intelligence and consolidated management. So the way that stuff fits into cloud, and again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the public and cloud network threat prevention and the cloud security posture management are the two fundamental security controls for the cloud. So the public and private cloud network threat prevention, that element of CloudGuard, again, CloudGuard takes advantage of Threat Cloud, takes advantage of the consolidated security management. So we've got a content inspection engine, and we build that private and public threat prevention on top of that. And then we have configuration and log inspection. That is the cloud security posture management piece that we got with the acquisition of Dome9. So that's where you get the posture management, the visibility, and then you layer on top of that the application and workload protection, and then the intelligence and threat hunting. So that's the cloud-specific threat prevention. So those two elements, based on the content inspection and then based on the configuration and log inspection, that is the combination of things that we put together to make CloudGuard and those fundamental foundational protections. Again, one thing I'll point out here is most of this is based on content inspection, but the very interesting thing about the posture management and the additional protections that are built on top of that, we don't actually look at content to accomplish the threat prevention in those cases. We do it all through APIs and through log inspection, which is very important if you think about it. In the cloud, if things are going to be super scalable, you're going to be extremely agile, it's almost impossible to expect to be able to inspect 100% of the content. You need security that goes beyond content inspection. One of the challenges with traditional network security that's based on content inspection is the faster it goes, the faster your security processors have to go. The more it scales, the more your security processors have to scale. So you end up with massive firewalls in order to be able to do all that content inspection, but they can only do the content inspection where you've established that perimeter. So the additional tools to be able to do configuration and log inspection, to be able to do that posture management, those are really essential tools in the cloud. But the combination of all these things together to be able to do the mobile, the endpoint, the network, the cloud portion of the network, and the cloud applications, that combination, that's the kind of the killer value proposition of the Checkpoint Infinity architecture.
Tom, this is a fantastic slide. So this is really where the slide is explaining Checkpoint's evolving to a cloud company, right? So we've always been Checkpoint. When you think of Checkpoint, you think firewall, you think hardware traditionally. But now when we're thinking Checkpoint, we're talking a cybersecurity company. This is what we're talking about, right? The cloud stuff and moving forward.
Yeah, this is really where the future is for Checkpoint, is in this cloud-specific threat prevention, and in taking kind of this basic elements of the posture management, the application and workload protection. That's really where it's at in the cloud world, and more and more of the things that we do, the utility that we get out of the network, out of the internet, out of shopping online. Integrated manufacturing stuff, all of that stuff is running in cloud applications. So we need to be able to secure those applications and be able to measure our posture within the cloud. It's not just about establishing a secure perimeter anymore. Firewalls won't do it. There's much more to it than that. And that's how Checkpoint has evolved. And we've sort of, it's interesting how in any company, sometimes a key acquisition will really result in a company reinventing themselves. And I'm really excited about, the reason I'm in this job and the reason I, kind of put myself here and work my way into this position was because I was really excited about, some of the new things and the new possibilities with this acquisition of Dome9. And it's pretty fun stuff. It's cool to see the way Checkpoint is changing and the way that we're addressing this cloud market and really morphing the way that the company does security.
Great. Thank you.
We sometimes throw this picture up there. It's kind of interesting, this was, we were going to talk about cloud and about Dome9, but there's this consolidated security architecture that's Infinity is really key. Fitting all the puzzle pieces together to protect all of the different parts of the customer's IT infrastructure. The network is the traditional stuff, but a lot of that's being replaced by cloud, and then the mobile devices and the endpoint devices that we use to access those applications, whether they're in the traditional data centers or in the cloud, securing those devices and securing those applications. That's really the frontier and the place where we really need to be able to help our customers with security in those areas. So, all right, kind of shift gears here and let's talk about how to make money with this stuff. Let's start out with how the pricing works. So the public and private cloud network security, again, this is the firewall in the cloud. We can do that the same way that you would do it with a security appliance today. We can do it. It's very simple in the cloud because you can provide all of the different protections and you can just scale it up per core. And so the pricing is pretty straightforward for that. And then the cloud security posture management, it's a very different thing. Again, this is it's not based on content inspection. It's based on looking at the cloud and looking at all your cloud assets through APIs. So we have this concept of billable protected assets. And what we do is we count computing and storage resources. So kind of a one-to-one, we count EC2 instances and virtual machines in, again, EC2 is what AWS calls them. And then virtual machine is what Google and Microsoft call them. And then database, relational database services, we count those one-to-one. And then some of the microservices, AWS calls it a Lambda or just a serverless function in Google and Microsoft. We count those at 6-to-1 because they're not always there. So we've used this ratio of 6-to-1 for every 6 latest Lambdas or for every 6 Azure functions. We count that as one billable protected asset. And then the cost for that is, list price is a little less than $20,000 a year per 100 billable protected assets. And you'll find that a lot of small cloud environments will be, about 100 or less. Some really large cloud environments can go into thousands and thousands of billable protected assets. So some of the opportunities out there can be pretty big. There's another SKU out there that we don't use quite as often, but there's an additional feature called identity access management protection that's for AWS. So there is one other SKU that's slightly more expensive, but we don't see that very often because oftentimes customers have other other answers and other ways of addressing that identity access management. So that's the basic pricing for those foundational elements. And then let's take a look at competition. Our biggest competition in the mind of the customer often is just looking at the native tools. But real simply, those native tools are not multi-cloud, of course. And Dome9 and our cloud security posture management is. They've got relatively limited rule sets. We've got extremely expansive rule sets, and we're constantly producing more. And then we've got the ability to create new rule sets in a very simple way, something we call the governance specification language. It is a very easy way to write your own rule sets without having to be a programmer. And then
Tom, is it fair to say that most end users have either a combination of Azure and AWS in their environments, or have you seen end users be exclusively with one or the other?
You know, it's all over the map, Paul. It's
Yep.
we've seen some customers are pretty committed one way or the other, but most people kind of look at that and they go, all right, we're pretty heavy Azure right now, but we know that we need to be flexible and be able to take advantage of AWS. Sometimes it depends on the industry. For instance, in the retail industry, they generally hate AWS, right? They hate Amazon because they're such a big competitor. So in the retail industry, you'll tend to see more Google and Microsoft cloud infrastructure. So it just kind of depends.
Great.
We do have a document that we've put together that talks about the comparison of Checkpoint Cloud Guard versus the native tools in AWS and Azure. We can make that available to you. It's kind of shows where some of the advantages are, particularly in multi-cloud, in the higher level, that high fidelity security context and advanced threat prevention. Where the advantages are for Checkpoint versus the native tools in AWS and Azure. And then probably outside those native tools, our number one competitor out there is Palo Alto Networks, and they're a worthy competitor. They've got an excellent product. They're very closely aligned with Google right now. Google Cloud Platform is making the Prisma sometimes available for free, so it's pretty worthy competitor. But the Prisma Networks is built on a completely different way. They started out as a log inspection tool, and it's just a different evolution story. CloudGuard Dome9, the Dome9 as a company prior to the acquisition by Checkpoint, they were very much a cloud security posture management tool that looked at configuration through APIs rather than at logs. So it's a completely different approach. And kind of what the results of that approach is alerts take a little bit longer. Prisma is primarily looking at trailing indicators. They're looking mostly at logs, where Dome9 is looking at the leading indicators. We're looking at the APIs and the configurations, rather than looking at logs, which take place after events occur. So much more of a prevention mindset with the Checkpoint approach. And just pure ease of use in terms of the user interface, in terms of the way we do the graphical interface and the way we portray the network and the assets, and the way that we allow you to write your own security rules. So just lots of differences in ease of use, and again, kind of subjective, but most users agree that if they've had their hands on both tools, that the Checkpoint tools are far easier to use. Again, some of that is the visualization, but again, going back to the fact that the Palo Alto tools, their acquisition of RedLock, that was a log analysis tool rather than a configuration management tool. And then the remediation stuff. Prisma does need some additional write preventions, whereas Dome9 actually does not always need write permissions in order to do remediation. And in billing, we actually we're a little different in the way that we count the billable assets. We actually count fewer things as billable assets than our friends at Palo Alto. So let's talk about selling this stuff. If you're not familiar with cloud terminology, very important that you get yourself that way. This is a cheat sheet that we've put together that just kind of talks about the terminology that you'll run into with AWS, with Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform. Just simple things like knowing what a computing thing is in those different environments, to be able to understand what an EC2 is and what a VM is, what an RDS and S3, a lot of these a lot of this terminology. It helps to have a cheat sheet sometimes, and we can make this available to you that might be very helpful just to kind of to keep handy as a reference. When I first started doing this a couple of years ago, I referred to this a lot. In fact, this is an old version. I've actually updated this considerably with some of the new microservices language that you'll see thrown about in these cloud environments. So just being able to speak the language is really important. So, and being able to ask the right questions, you want to identify an opportunity here, basic questions to ask. And we'll share these slides with you and we'll be able to, we'd love to help coach you through how to ask some of these questions is, what's the company's cloud strategy? Some companies, they don't really have a cloud strategy. They've got some guys over in the corner that are doing some interesting things in cloud, but they don't really have an overall company cloud strategy. Some companies are at the opposite end of that spectrum. They're born in the cloud and they've never had traditional IT infrastructure and never will, and they're doing everything in the cloud. And they're going to, they know that they need these tools and they may already have some of those tools. A lot of companies that have been in business for a while, they're changing their strategy to be cloud first. All new application development is going to be cloud first. So it kind of covers the spectrum, but you're going to see more and more companies with a cloud first, or with where they're developing all their new stuff in the cloud. And then who's responsible for driving that stuff? It's going higher and higher in the organization now as far as who is driving that cloud strategy. The CIO, sometimes they'll, somebody who's responsible for compliance. You'll have compliance officers, particularly in, healthcare or anybody who handles any kind of customer data. They're much more sensitive now to being compliant and to make sure they're very careful with sensitive customer data that they have. So a lot of times there'll be a compliance officer, somebody you normally wouldn't think about talking to. If you sell security products, you might not be thinking about talking to that compliance officer, but that's a great person to talk to about some of these cloud security products, particularly the cloud security posture management and what that can do for them. And then what internal teams are deploying or architecting this stuff? Cloud folks are a little different. It's not always your traditional network stuff. In fact, in many, many companies, the application development teams are the folks that are really doing everything in cloud. And the network team that might be your normal security context, they might not even know what's going on there, or they might be pretty far behind the development curve. So finding good cloud contacts and the people who are responsible for that stuff is really key. The basic questions about which service providers that they use. The best answers for us is if they're multi-cloud. If they're exclusively AWS, exclusively Azure, they may have convinced themselves or been convinced by the provider that those native tools are all that they need. But if they're multi-cloud, they know that they need more sophisticated tools to be consistent across those environments. And then what kind of cloud services are they using? Some folks are just using Office 365 and they say, oh yeah, we're in the cloud. Well, yeah, your application's in the cloud, but you're not really, transforming your infrastructure if all you're doing is Office 365. So, if they're doing, true infrastructure as a service, if they're taking advantage of microservices, then, those are the folks that can really take advantage of these tools. And then are they using native tools? What are they using to provide visibility into their assets in the cloud? That's a pretty basic question to be able to ask. So, what tools are you using to manage that stuff in the cloud? How do you establish visibility? How do you know what you've got? To kind of uncover the opportunity for a conversation about cloud security posture management. And then again, getting back to the compliance officer, are they governed by compliance regulations, and which ones? Some of the obvious stuff like HIPAA for healthcare, GDPR for customer data, PCI for financial and payment services. And then who's responsible for managing that compliance? again, a totally new audience than who you might traditionally be speaking to about security stuff. It's a pretty straightforward sales process. The beautiful thing about this cloud security posture management provided by Dome9 is that it's an easier sell. It's the first call is generally to discuss the cloud strategy. It's kind of an introduction and discovery call. We want to get past the gatekeeper and understand their environment and position ourselves well for what we want to do next. And what we want to do next is present the solution with the goal of getting to a POC. This is usually an hour-long call to really show them around the product, to show off the advantages of the tools. And then the third thing is the proof of concept. Get out there, do an enterprise trial with these folks, and usually you can do this in 30 to 45 days to demonstrate the functionality. If the customer is committed, and then we've got a good understanding, a good set of well set expectations for success criteria, you can usually get through this in 30 to 45 days and close a sale. So we're talking about a sales cycle of 30 to 60 days here. Really great opportunity to move pretty quickly and to be able to bypass a lot of the the traditional stuff, because cloud stuff works quickly and the sales cycle for some of these cloud tools can work quickly. So it's a great opportunity, and get you in with the the leading edge, the exciting part of what's going on with these customers. So if we want to take a look at the next steps here, we'd love to help you out with identifying opportunities, with going into this in more detail and supporting you in conversations with your customers. Just let us know how we can help, and we're here to help. So you've listened to me talk an awful lot here. So,
I know Tricia.
Any other questions?
Yeah, any questions from the audience? Please use the chat or the Q&A portals. But Tom, this is a great oversight. Thank you so much. We always want to try to give a few minutes back to everybody. But would you say that the assessments, the Dome9 or the Cloud Guard assessments to go in and assess a end user's environment to show them any security, compliance, or risk is a good tool for people like the partners to use?
Yep, absolutely. We've got some partners out there that are using the cloud security posture management as an assessment tool. When they go in and do security assessments for customers, there's a lot of stuff that you would do with pen testing and that sort of thing. We've got a number of customers that are using Dome9 and the cloud security posture management as one of their assessment tools. So it is a great assessment tool.
Excellent. All right, there's no further questions in the chat. So with that, we'll give you at least a couple minutes back of your day. Tricia, thank you so much for setting this up. Tom, truly appreciate you taking the time today to run through this excellent presentation.
Hey,
thank you so much for presenting, Tom. And as well as for the partners on.
Go ahead, Tricia.
I'm sorry. For the partners on this call, if you can go ahead and make sure to enter this training in your Engage app for points, that'd be awesome. And thank you again, Tom and Paul, for presenting to us. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.